Part 29. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 281. Chapter 281 Proposal, 1. Yao's mobility is really top-notch. He only mentioned setting up a separate studio for her that day. Within a week, not only the location, but also the manpower arrangements, equipment and instruments, etc. had been arranged. In his words, it's just waiting for her to choose the name of the brand and officially list it. Of course, this is still in the name of Xinchen. The recent statements of Xinchen are also rising all the time, and it is known as the most outstanding branch of Huanya. I have been busy with this thing for a while, happy and tired. The new studio is still some distance away from the new students, but not far from the studio, there is a large flower garden base. In Yao's words, firstly, it is convenient to obtain materials, and secondly, it can inspire inspiration. Suyun has already realized how meticulous and thoughtful he is. Looking at her studio, she can see that she is getting closer to her dream little by little. I think that when she went to learn how to make perfume, her family actually did not agree. Later, after she got together with Luo Yuanhang, she even had a falling out with her family. The defeat in the competition once made her deeply doubt her ability. She worked hard for several years without caring about anything else, just making wedding dresses for others. But now, she finally feels that her life is beginning to become clearer. Step by step, you also know what you want and should continue to move in a clear direction. When we came out of the studio, it was already dark outside. Because the place was not in the urban area, the lighting here was not that bright. On the contrary, it highlighted the stars in the sky that shone extraordinarily. The night wind blew by, and the cold wind blew in my ears. She wrapped her coat tightly and walked towards where she parked her car. At this moment, the car lights on the opposite road suddenly turned on, and the dazzling light enveloped her completely, making her almost unable to open her eyes. Suyun subconsciously raised her hand to cover her eyes, and saw someone getting out of the car directly opposite and walking slowly towards her direction. You don't even need to see his face clearly, you can recognize him just by looking at the figure and the familiar rhythm of his steps. Suyun laughed, "What are you doing?" Until she got closer, she saw clearly that he was holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand, a large bouquet of red roses in his arms, but it looked a bit funny. Maybe Yao himself felt awkward. He usually walked casually and handsomely, but now he looked a little stiff. He walked up to her awkwardly and said, "Send it to you." Even these two words are stiff. Looking at the large bouquet of flowers, Suyun was surprised and wanted to laugh. The two of them have been together for so long. Not only are they an old married couple, they are also so familiar that they are like close comrades in arms. He has never done this in such a long time. Why did he think of giving her flowers today? Is today a special day? She frowned and thought about it. It was less than 1 year since the two of them received their certificates. It seemed a bit far-fetched to say how many days they had known each other. As for other birthdays and so on, it didn't matter. Studio. It hasn't been officially listed yet, but he's having a rose sale today. Without reaching out to pick it up, Suyun looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" "Send flowers." Yao stretched out his hand, feeling that this was obvious, and she was a bit unconventional. Wouldn't it be said that women would happily accept it, and would they still be very moved? "I know how to send flowers, but why? Is today special?" she asked, tilting her head and clasping her hands behind her back, showing no intention of taking them. Yao frowned, "Does it have to be special to give it as a gift? If it's not special, it can't be given as a gift, take it quickly." He is a big man, holding such a large bouquet of flowers is really weird. Hook her hand, push the flowers directly into her arms, and force her to accept them. Suyun couldn't help laughing when she saw his serious look but couldn't wait to throw the flowers to her. It's really hard for this man to do anything romantic. It's so awkward to even send flowers. Fortunately, the two of them had a flash or hidden marriage at the time. If it were a proposal, I don't know what the scene would be like. Hold a large bouquet of roses in her arms, she laughed so hard, but Sci-Yao didn't feel any joy at achieving his goal. She wasn't smiling happily because she received the flowers, but rather mockingly. With a dark face, he grabbed her waist and asked, "Aren't the flowers beautiful?" "It looks good," she smiled and nodded. "Am I not good looking?" he asked again. "It looks good," Suyun replied smoothly. Suyun nodded, "Yeah." "Then why are you laughing?" When he asked this, Suyun laughed even more happily. "Don't laugh anymore." He lowered his head and sealed his lips with a kiss, using the quickest and most effective way to stop her laughing. A flash of annoyance flashed through my heart. It turned out like this in the first beginning. It seemed a bit messed up. I don't know what will happen next. Should I continue? I regretted that I shouldn't have listened to the straight man Su Feng's advice. The result of the discussion between two inexperienced men was to search online and select a bunch of plans. Plus his own ideas. He originally thought it should be very romantic. It's beautiful, but now it looks like it's going to be a bad start. A long and passionate kiss, the temperature of the body increased a lot, and of course it successfully stopped her laughing. "Thank you for the flowers, I like them very much." She looked down at the partially crumpled flowers in her arms and said in a low voice. Hearing this sentence, Sci-Yao expressed that he was very satisfied. "This is the correct script. Can we go back?" "It's so cold outside," Suyun said softly, preparing to walk in the direction of the car. "Wait a minute." After coming back to his senses, Sci-Yao grabbed her and said, "I'll show you something." Suyun felt that he was weird today, but she didn't know what he was going to do, so she saw him let go of his hand, opened the placket of his coat, and took out two sticks from his arms. "Well, looks like a firework stick." The reason why it looks like it is because the two firework sticks that were originally supposed to be long have been broken and fell to both sides in different directions. The two sticks that were originally very energetic now look like they are drooping. Wilted. Obviously, Sci-Yao did not expect this result. His eyes looked at the two firework sticks, seeming a little confused and a little surprised. Looking at his appearance, Suyun couldn't help but laugh again. "But then I thought about it, and if I laughed again, it would probably hurt his face, so I quickly held it back, coughed and said, 'Is this a firework stick? Do you want to set off fireworks with me?'" Sci-Yao was awakened by her words, and nodded, "Yes, let's set off fireworks. I just don't know whether it will burn or not." The original plan was to light the firework sticks. Even if it was a signal, Su Feng would follow the next action, but I didn't expect that this thing broke when I held it in my arms. Can it still be lit? End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 282. Chapter 282 Proposal, 2. Do not care. Sci-Yao didn't think too much, so he took out a lighter and lit it. The firework stick started to burn in a decent manner. Although it was a little short, at least it still had that atmosphere when he held it in his hand. Seeing that he looked so clumsy but serious for the first time, Suyun stopped laughing in a cooperative manner, walked over and took one of the firework sticks from his hand. What next? Looking at her, Sci-Yao didn't speak. Then there was a sound and Suyun was stunned for a moment, and then the lights around him turned on. One by one, in a very orderly manner, they formed a circle, and the two of them stood in the middle of the circle. Obviously this had been arranged a long time ago, but she didn't know when he arranged it, how much time and thought he spent, and hung those lights in the surrounding woods. At this moment, it was like a huge stage, and they were standing on it. Right in the middle of the stage. Where did this come from? She turned around and looked back at the initiator and asked with a smile. However, the next second, Soo-Yun's smile froze. She opened her eyes wide and saw the proud man kneeling on one knee in front of her. At some point, there was a velvet box in his hand. The opened box inside is a sparkling diamond ring. I know it's not convenient for you to work, but you still have to have the proper ceremony, he said seriously, paused, and then said, Soo-Yun, marry me. At this moment, Soo-Yun didn't know what to say. She pursed her lips and wanted to smile, but her eyes were a little hot. Already married? It has been a long time since I received the certificate. Do I still need to ask for it? Then marry again, he continued, this time, I want everyone in the world to know that you are mine. After all, he was still the domineering man. Soo-Yun's eyes turned away and then back again with a sly smile. Can I say no? Standing up, Sci-Yao couldn't help but hold one of her hands tightly, and the other hand wrapped around her waist. You can try it? Soo-Yun couldn't help laughing. This unruly man, does he have to be so domineering even when he proposes marriage? What reason did she have to say no? In this life, she will never find a better man than him. Holding her hand, Sci-Yao lowered his head and carefully put the ring on her finger. From now on, you can never escape again. I never thought about escaping. Shaking her head, Soo-Yun held his hand with her backhand, and held him tightly. Mr. Si, it's too late for you to escape. Sci-Yao lowered his head and kissed her lips. It's so sweet. It was his long-cherished wish to marry her, and he was happy to do so. A huge roar sounded above her head. This unusual move made Soo-Yun couldn't help but raise her head and saw a huge helicopter slowly descending from the sky. The landing point was on the lawn not far away. The huge wind and waves caused by the propeller made it almost impossible to stand, and she felt even colder. She subconsciously gathered her coat, wrapped it a little tighter, and turned to look at her husband. Is this also your arrangement? Come on. Sci-Yao lowered his head and glanced at the time. It was pretty good. Except for the initial little hiccup, everything was going according to plan. Soo-Yun raised her eyebrows, feeling more and more interesting, and curious about how many more surprises he would give herself tonight. He took her hand and got into the helicopter. When the plane slowly ascended, she gradually saw the situation on the ground clearly. The lights that she thought were very romantic at first, when they were far away from the ground, she gradually saw that it was actually more than just a helicopter. A circle still has a letter shape. The specific shape is S. Red Heart S, which is the capital letters of the two people's last names, with a heart in the middle. The intention is definitely there, it's just. She tilted her head and stared down. Sci-Yao hugged her and asked in her ear, do you like it? I like it, but I like it, but... How? She looked down at the scenery below and pointed at the light. Who arranged and designed this light shape? Is there a problem? Doesn't it sound like you're satisfied? No, I'm more curious about who came up with such a design. Sci-Yao also looked at it, but he didn't think anything was wrong. Su Feng. Oh. No wonder, that straight man's aesthetics. Before she could say anything, Sci-Yao added, and me. As if he doesn't forget to take credit in front of his wife. Of course, there is indeed his idea in it. After all, it is his own proposal ceremony. What's the point of having it all planned by others? So his thoughts must be included in it. This is the most unique. Soo-Yun felt speechless. Should I praise you, or should I hurt you? Look at the S on both sides. It's Soo-Yun's Su, and Sci-Yao's Si, that's you and me. The one in the middle. He suddenly stopped and narrowed his eyes slightly. Especially with the movement of the helicopter, he felt even more weird. That, oh. You can see it too, right? Soo-Yun said immediately. Look, it was you who said it, not me. It just means I'm not the only one with eye problems. It's obviously something wrong with the shape. That's a heart, Sci-Yao emphasized. Although from the current perspective, it is difficult for him to be convinced. No matter how you look at it, it looks like an O. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is the S connected on both sides. When connected, it becomes SOS. You think, if someone took this as a distress signal, wouldn't it be a mistake? She turned to look at Sci-Yao and said half-jokingly. As soon as he finished speaking, Sci-Yao called Su Feng directly. Su Feng. Mr. Put out all the lights, he said. Su Feng raised his head and looked up at the sky. Oh. Isn't it originally said to light up for an hour? Is this going to be destroyed? However, he also acted according to orders, and after listening, he ordered people to put out the lamps. Looking at the ground falling into darkness, without the obtrusive O anymore, he felt relieved, but at the same time he felt a little depressed. He has always been sure of everything he does and hits the target with one hit, but this time the proposal has been planned for so long, and there are a lot of mistakes, which makes him really dissatisfied. This proposal disappoints you, right? He sighed. Su Yun shook her head. No. I think it's great. But something went wrong. This was simply intolerable to him. It's just because of these little episodes that it's unique. Su Yun's face was full of joy, and she didn't look like she was lying to coax him. She held his face with one hand. I'm serious, I really like it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 283. Chapter 283. Opportunities are created by people. Until the lights on the ground went out and the cars of Su Feng and several other assistants drove away, the area fell into a deathly silence. No one noticed that there was a car parked under a certain tree in this forest. The two people in the car have completely different expressions. Su Jianran held the steering wheel tightly with both hands, and her eyes were already red. Even if she tried her best to restrain herself, her rising and falling chest betrayed her mood at the moment. She never expected that she would see the scene with her own eyes. Yes, she knew that he was always special to that woman, and he doted on her very much, but she never thought that he could dote on her to this extent. The scene like that just now was her fantasy countless times over the years, but the heroine should be her, not someone else. Roses, rings, lights, even a helicopter. Why is Sci-Yao so kind to her? How is she better than him? In contrast, Yun Chugzio, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was much calmer. She even turned on the headlights and touched up her makeup in front of the small mirror while saying, "It's so romantic." There are rumors that Sci-Yao is a cold-blooded and uninterested man. Now it seems that the rumors are indeed unbelievable. Stop talking, Su Jianran turned around and yelled angrily. Stopping applying lipstick, Yun Chugzio turned to look at her, her eyes a little helpless. Look at you, is it worth it to make yourself so angry? I'm up there with you and me, and you're here blowing the cold wind and getting hummed. Vinegar, but does it work? You don't have to worry about it. Throwing her hand away, her words pierced Su Jianran's heart. I don't want to care about you, I just want to help you. Sighing and putting away her makeup supplies, Yun Chugzio sighed and said, if you want me to say it, you are self-abuse. Either you give up completely, or, just go ahead and wiggle like this, and when the baby is born, you won't have anywhere to cry. She said the children are all born, which greatly stimulated Su Jianran. You said that woman is pregnant. Yun Chugzio was stunned for a moment. I don't know about this. I'm just saying that if this continues, it will be a matter of time before they have children. Having said that, in the situation of the Si family, the status will be stable only if they have a child, right? Think about it, if you have Sci-Yao's child, he will be the national treasure of the Si family. She said thoughtfully, and Su Yuruan's eyes sparkled. Yes. The child? Why didn't I think of the child? What are you going to do? Yun Chugzio turned to look at her and said with a surprised look on her face. Chu Shui, I should have tried hard to conceive a child long ago. As long as I have a child, I won't be afraid that I won't be able to hold his heart, Su Genran said almost in a daze. But didn't you say that you didn't even hold hands? How could you have a child? Didn't you teach me already? She smiled meaningfully, and Yun Chugzio blinked. When did I teach you? Your father's mistress is different. She also has a child. Even if she has no status, because she has a child, your father still can't let her go after all these years. Yun Chugzio's expression changed and she nodded, yes. But she can't enter our house. That's because she has no status or ability. I don't believe it anymore with my family background and status. If I have a child, my fourth brother will not want me. What you said makes sense, Yun Chugzio said thoughtfully. It's just, if you want to have a child, you have to have this opportunity. Opportunities are created by people. Su Genran was still hesitant before, but when she saw this romantic and painstaking proposal seen with her own eyes, she had to say that she was sour. Her heart seemed to have been trampled and ground severely. She watched helplessly as the man she had loved for so many years bothered to please another woman. Why did she stay with him for so many years? Since she can't win his love even by being obedient, she should use some extraordinary means. Su Yun did not expect that she had mixed so many perfumes, but the one that stood out the most was the one she mixed for Lisa. In fact, only Lisa has used that one. Because it was specially tailored for her, the amount is not very large. Besides herself and Lisa, the only one who has really smelled the perfume is probably the female reporter who interviewed her. Of course, except for some people around Lisa, the popularity on the internet is very large. Perhaps the more mysterious it is, the more curious it is, and the more curious it is, the more people want to find out. The search popularity of this perfume has skyrocketed, even surpassing many international first-line brands, and various products have even appeared on Zinbao and Zixi. Same style. Of course, it is impossible for the same model to be the same, but they are all just using the banner to make a fortune. Many merchants also saw an opportunity and placed purchase orders with Xinchen. For a time, the number of calls from Xinchen sales department was almost overwhelming. For this reason, Wang Shuo had to talk to her personally. Xiao Su, you have seen these orders, what do you think? Wang Shuo was very direct. He showed her the company's demand orders and letters hoping to establish a cooperative relationship. He said he was asking for opinions. In fact, of course I hope she can nod in agreement. However, Su Yun categorically refused. Mr. Wang, this is impossible. You should know the meaning of the words customized. Yes, I know you made it for your friend. But you also gave her the perfume, but the copyright of the formula still belongs to you. Besides, I heard that you also confiscated her money, right? It's an opportunity, you should seize it well. To be honest, Wang Shuo is really greedy for these orders. It's impossible not to be excited. What follows is a huge amount of income, which is a big leap for freshmen. It has nothing to do with whether I took her money or not, Mr. Wang. I have my professional ethics. Su Yun threw the cooperation proposals on the table. To be honest, if we really cooperate, mass production, the word customized has lost its meaning. Thinking about it in the long run, who will dare to ask us to customize an exclusive perfume? After all, it will soon be ruined. That's true, but in fact there are only a few customers who can customize it every year. It's very troublesome to specialize in this, so it's better to. Before Wang Shuo finished speaking, she was interrupted. No matter how many there are, customers are customers. Since the agreement is exclusive, a verbal contract has been formed. To go back on it now is a breach of contract. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Arrive. It's not as serious as a breach of contract, but look. Wang Shuo just said a few words when the phone on his desk rang. He raised his hand and said, "Wait a minute." End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 284. Chapter 284 The Reason for Rejecting Me. I don't know who the caller was, but when Wang Shuo answered the phone, he glanced at her from time to time, and finally said, "Okay, I'll ask her." Suyun intuitively has something to do with her, but she doesn't know what it is. "Maybe, you are right." Looking at her, Wang Shuo said thoughtfully. After all, knowing the relationship behind her, Wang Shuo could not ignore her wishes and must take the order. The key is that the phone call just now made him change his mind. Maybe it is not feasible to take the exclusive customization route. Suyun was puzzled. "Do you know who called just now?" Wang Shuo rubbed his hands and said happily, "I don't know if you have heard of the former actress and actress, Yao Ying. She was very popular back then, and later married into the wealthy Yunnan family." Home. Suyun was startled. "I've heard of it. Not only have I heard about it, but I also learned about the private relationship between her and Luo Yuanhang a while ago, but, was she the one who made this call?" "Yes, it's her." Wang Shuo continued. "She wants to invite you to customize an exclusive perfume for her, and she also wants to ask you to meet, tonight. What do you think?" After 2 seconds of silence, Suyun said, "I'm afraid I can't do this, so I'd better ask her to find another way to do it. I originally thought that there would be no problem with this matter, but I didn't expect that she refused." Wang Shuo was very surprised. "Why? Just now you said that you wanted to make exclusive customized models and refused to take on those cooperation orders. I also respect that. I agree. But now someone comes to you to ask you to make an exclusive custom product. You are still such a famous and status person. If this order is completed, your status in the fragrance industry will also be improved. I can't think of any reason why you should refuse. I know you are not short of money now, and you can do whatever you want, but this is still a company after all, and you are still in the company. We should always proceed from the overall situation and consider the overall situation. We cannot just based on your personal preference." Perhaps he was a little anxious, and Wang Shuo's words were not as polite as before, and he was very straightforward. Suyun didn't care about his way of speaking, but it did wake her up. "That's right, if it was just your own personal studio, you could do it according to your own preferences, but now it is backed by Xinchen, and no matter what, it is still owned by Xinchen." Even if she didn't look at Si Yao, Wang Shuo was not too kind to her. After thinking about it, she changed her mind and nodded, "Okay, I'll go see her, but I can't guarantee whether this business deal will go smoothly." Hearing her relent, Wang Shuo was already very happy. "Okay. If you go, there will be no problem." After all, the other party asked her by name, which meant that they still had a very strong willingness to cooperate. As long as she was willing to nod, there was no reason why the negotiation could not be concluded. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, when Suyun walked out of the company building, a car had stopped at the door of the building. The car stopped, the window lowered, revealing a bright face, "Miss Su." Suyun had seen this face on some TV before. The most important thing was that her appearance was also included in the information Chu Chen gave her a few days ago, so she recognized it at a glance. It was Yao Ying. Unexpectedly, she would come to the company door in person to block her, so even if she wanted to change her mind and not go, it seemed inappropriate. After a slight hesitation, she walked quickly toward the car. The door opened randomly, she got into the car, and nodded to Yao Ying in an unfamiliar and polite manner, which was regarded as a greeting. She didn't know whether Luo Yuanhang's extremely secretive mother knew about their relationship, but it didn't matter. It was all in the past anyway. Facing this once possible quasi-mother-in-law, the inner peace is extremely peaceful. Yao Ying has been looking at her. The young girl has her own unique youthful atmosphere, and the light fragrance on her body is very pleasant. It is not a strong fragrance, nor is it the kind of light and sweet fragrance that girls like. It just looks like a very natural body fragrance, but mixed with some indescribable good smell. Anyway, when you smell her scent, you will feel that your impetuous mood has calmed down a lot, and you are not so anxious. Mrs. Yoon, if you have anything to say, you can say it now. There is no need to find a place to chat. In fact, for you, this is the most private place, Su Yoon said while looking out the window. Yao Ying raised the corners of her lips and smiled. You are really smart. After all, she was once a popular film queen. Even if she retires and marries into a wealthy family, paparazzi will inevitably take photos of her wherever she goes. Over the years, as she got older and she took better precautions, she was still doing well and wouldn't cause any unpleasant troubles. However, paparazzi are pervasive, and who knows which corner they will hide in. Today, the conversation she had with her was indeed not suitable for others to hear. Drive the car slower, she ordered, then pressed a button, and the baffle between the front and rear seat slowly rose, turning the back seat into a private space. This is an Alpha. The interior of the car is large and comfortable. Yao Ying took out 2 cans of drinks from the small refrigerator and handed her one. Su Yoon shook her head. Thank you, no need. I know a little about perfumery, and I know that you cherish your nose and pay attention to daily maintenance. This is not wine, just soda water. Drinking a little is good for your health. After a pause, she smiled again. You don't think I'm going to use those dirty tricks on you, right? She glanced down at the can of soda, took it, opened it, took a sip, and held it in her palm. Yao Ying didn't try to persuade her. She took a few sips and then raised her head to think about it, as if she was looking for an entry point for the conversation. Mr. Wang has told you the reason why I'm looking for you. I want you to prepare an exclusive perfume for me. Yao Ying looked at her and got straight to the point. You can set the price, you will definitely do it. Satisfy you. I'm sorry, I can't do it. It's better for Mrs. Yoon to hire someone else. It was easier for her to refuse in person than to refuse from the company. Yao Ying's eyes flashed. Why? Do you have a problem with me? Of course not, Su Yoon said, it's just about making an exclusive perfume. From my personal point of view, I think we should understand the customizer himself, his personality, hobbies and other aspects. Only with a comprehensive understanding can we better embody these infusions. In perfume, you can get a more ideal and suitable exclusive perfume. Is it so complicated? Yao Ying tilted her head and looked at her with doubt in her eyes. Perfume creation seems simple, but every perfumer's understanding is different. At least for me, this is my understanding, so I'm sorry. Maybe other perfumers will be more knowledgeable and may be more suitable for you, madam. She nodded slightly as an apology, and then put the soda on the table beside her. Isn't there another reason why you rejected me? Yao Ying said suddenly. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 285. Chapter 285. Because of him, I have nothing to fear. Isn't it because of my relationship with Luo Yuanhang that you rejected me? Her beautiful eyes glanced at her with a half smile, and the words came out of her mouth easily. Su Yoon was very surprised. She turned around to look at her, with disbelief in her eyes. The secret that she had been carefully hiding, how could she reveal it so easily? You don't have to look at me like that. I know, you already know, Yao Ying said calmly. The reason why I made it clear to you is because I want everyone to speak openly today. Some things are inconvenient when there are many people. Now it's just you and me, there's nothing bad to say. This has nothing to do with whether it's nice or not. I reject you just because I think I can't fulfill this order, and not for any other reason, Su-yoon said. Really? Yao Ying leaned forward, stared at her, and suddenly asked, then let me ask you, where is Yuen Hang now? Su-yoon looked puzzled. How could I know? Why don't you know? He only thought about you, and everything he did later was to save you. I remember that before he disappeared, the last person he saw besides me was you, not you. Who else? Hasn't he contacted you for so long? Luo Yuanhang is missing. No wonder I haven't seen him jumping around for so long. I originally thought that he would find a place to heal after his defeat and accept the blow of failure, but he unexpectedly disappeared. But, how could he, a living and well-behaved person, disappear? Is it because of bankruptcy? You don't know, he observed her carefully, as if he wanted to see if she was lying. Sorry, I really don't know. Since you know my relationship with him, you should also know that he and I broke up a long time ago, and his affairs have nothing to do with me, he shrugged. Apart from the brief surprise at knowing the news of his disappearance, she didn't have many other feelings. Whether Luo Yuanhang is missing or not, it has nothing to do with him. Yao Ying didn't say anything. She raised her head and took a sip of water. Then she put the jar down heavily and said, Su-yoon, are you so heartless? What should I say? You have been together for several years. Frankly speaking, although it is not convenient for me to reveal my identity, I have always been very optimistic about you as my future daughter-in-law. I admit that Yuen Hang has some things that I feel sorry for you about, but man, the best thing is knowing his mistakes and being able to change them. He has realized his mistakes and is willing to look back. Why can't you give him a chance to change things? Could it be that you really have no feelings for him at all? Yao Ying said earnestly, putting on a heart-to-heart look, I don't believe it. You have sacrificed so much for him before, which means you still like him and love him very much, right? Indeed, Si Yao's conditions are good, but a wealthy family is as deep as the sea. I know this personally, and I can tell you that you can't wade through the troubled waters of the Si family, and even your Chu family can't save it. About you. Silly boy, instead of wading into the troubled waters of the Si family, it is better to follow the voyage. I will provide you with resources to make a comeback. As long as you two work together, a couple in need will be a real couple. Su-yoon couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was so thoughtful of her. Every word was written with her in mind, and she was so moved that she almost cried. Then I'm really, thank you. You've really considered everything for me, she said with a chuckle. You agree? Yao Ying felt happy. What do I agree to? You. First of all, a man's success is not that he knows his mistakes and can correct them, but he knows his shame and knows where to stop. When he was with me, he was just using me. How could we talk about true feelings? The reason why he regretted it later, she added after a pause. One sentence, maybe it's regret. Isn't it because you see that I can bring greater benefits? Isn't it because Zhang Shiwei abandoned him? This is not. Yao Ying just wanted to explain, but she was interrupted, without giving her a chance to argue. Secondly, it is not clear whether the Si family's trip is muddy, but you also admitted that Si Yao's conditions are very okay. I want to correct you. It's not very good. Compared with Luo Yuanhang, why should I give up on this cloud and be willing to fall into a puddle of mud? At this point, Yao Ying's face was already very ugly. But Su-yoon had no intention of stopping and continued, finally, I think you may have forgotten the most important point. Didn't you say that Luo Yuanhang has disappeared? You asked me to follow him. Where should I follow him? Are you sure he can still find it? What do you mean? Originally, she could try to maintain her elegant demeanor, but when she heard the last sentence, Yao Ying's face became distorted. She tightened her grip and the jar in her hand was crushed with a click. It's nothing. He glanced at the jar she squeezed flat with a distant look, without any fluctuation in his expression. It's just that based on my understanding of him, with such a proud and arrogant personality, can he withstand this blow? Hard to say. If he can really come out, it may be possible to get up, but it is not impossible. He will be confused for a while. Are you cursing him? Yao Ying's eyes could spit out fire. This woman is actually cursing her precious son. I'm just analyzing the facts objectively. Of course, maybe what I said may not be accurate. After all, I don't really know him very well in the past few years together. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been deceived for so long. Yes, no. Su Yun glanced out of the car window and said, "Okay, I've said all that needs to be said. I think I've made it very clear. You can park in front of here, so let's just say goodbye." "You really don't want to take my order," Yao Ying said with a faint look. Looking at her, Su Yun said nothing. Silence was a silent rejection. "You think that with Si Yao protecting you, you have nothing to fear," Yao Ying sneered twice. Her attitude changed quickly, and she was no longer as sincere and kind as before. As expected of a movie queen, it's as easy to fall out with her as turning the page in a book. Yes, she was not shy at all, because with his support, I have nothing to fear. At first, she was afraid of what others said, worried that she was not a good match for him, and afraid of gossip. But after experiencing so much, she realized that other gossips were not important at all. Only his support and understanding were the most important thing to her. Needs. Because of him, I can be fearless." Yao Ying's face turned blue and she shouted, "Stop the car." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 286. Chapter 286. You are indeed not simple. It was already dark when she got home, but when she saw the lights at home, she could think of someone waiting for her, and she felt very peaceful and at ease in her heart. There was a warm atmosphere when he entered the house. Si Yao was sitting on the sofa in the living room watching TV. Seeing that she was back, he turned it off with the remote control. Then he got up and went to the kitchen to take out a bowl of simmering hot soup and wait for her to change it. "Shoes come in, just enough to sit down and drink." "Is it cold?" he said. "It's okay." After getting off Yao Ying's car, the location was not too far away, and it wasn't difficult to take a taxi. It was just a little far from home, so the time was delayed a little longer. Sipping the soup in small sips, she felt very satisfied as it was full of delicious taste. Si Yao didn't say anything. He held his head with one hand and turned his head to look at her. His long eyelashes hung down like a small fan. His mouth was slightly pouted as he took a sip of the soup and made a small sound. Her neck is very slender, the legendary swan neck, and her skin is very white, making people want to hold it when they look at it. The black hair is pulled up loosely, with a few naughty strands scattered down, adding a bit of laziness and charm. She is really beautiful without knowing it. "What are you looking at?" After drinking most of the bowl of soup, Su Yun turned her head to look at him. "It looks good," he said. Her eyes curved into an arc, she put down the bowl, held his face in her hands, and said seriously, "You're good looking too." The heat of the bowl was still in his hand, and it felt warm against his cheek. Si Yao raised his hand to cover hers and corrected her choice of words, "I am a man, and men cannot be described as good looking." "Who says it can't be done?" "You are just beautiful, the best looking one," she said with a smile, while naughtily squeezing his face with both hands. Si Yao used a little force and tightened his grip on her hand to prevent her from moving. Then he turned her over and pinned her down on the sofa. She leaned back on the sofa and blinked at him innocently, like a little sheep about to be slaughtered. Sci-Yao stared at her face for a while, then lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. The movements were extremely gentle, and the hands holding hers moved their palms to each other, and slowly clasped their fingers together. Lingering and gentle kiss, the kiss lasted for a long time before letting go, as if the oxygen had been drained out, and the breathing was a little short. "Did she make things difficult for you?" Sci-Yao couldn't help but asked. Su-Yun immediately understood. He was talking about Yao Yingtu's invitation. She shook her head. "No, you see, I didn't come back well." "Did you promise her?" he asked again. Shaking her head, Su-Yun said, "No, I refuse." Oh, it was an understatement, but it was obvious that he was relieved. "You don't want me to accept this order from her?" She was a little curious. Did Sci-Yao also know about the previous relationship between Yao Ying and Luo Yuanhang? However, considering his ability, it is not unusual to know. "I don't make any decisions for you. If you need my opinion, I can give it, but I respect your own choice." Su-Yun hugged his neck and leaned into his arms. "I don't want to take this order because I feel that my understanding and contact with her are not enough to give me the feeling to make an exclusive model suitable for her. However, I don't want to have too much contact with her, so I'll forget it." "Yes," he hugged her waist and responded. Thinking of what Yao Ying said tonight, Su-Yun had a flash of inspiration in her mind, and suddenly thought of something. She raised her head and looked at him. "By the way, Luo Yuanhang is missing, did you know?" "Why do I know?" he asked. After finishing speaking, he frowned. "Why do you think I should know?" "You doubt me." His mind was so smart that he immediately thought of the string of ideas. After a moment of silence, she subconsciously wanted to refute, but after a moment of hesitation, she answered honestly, "Yes, I have thought about the possibility that it was you who did it. After all, with your connections and abilities, it's completely possible, but if you say it's not possible, then it's definitely not possible." Her eyes were full of trust, and she was not just trying to coax him. Sci-Yao absolutely believed this. "No," he said. "A mere insignificant character, not worth worrying about." But, her mention really made him a little jealous. "Are you worried?" It seemed like a casual question, but there was a hint of jealousy in his words. After all, after being together for so long, Su-Yun could tell something was wrong when she heard it. She knew that he was jealous again, speechless and funny. "If I were worried, I wouldn't ask you so casually. Just listen, it's just a bit of a surprise to say this. For a person like him, nothing will happen to him." Although her words were meant to comfort him, CEOSI's jealousy was not so easy to calm down, and her words were full of sarcasm. After a pause, he cleared his throat and added, "Maybe I'll have someone check it tomorrow." It's okay to be jealous, but if she wants to find his whereabouts, he will still help her. "No need." Su-Yun shook her head, "not to mention whether he is really missing. If he is, someone will naturally call the police. This kind of missing persons case is better left to professional police officers. That's it. I won't bother you anymore." "Why, you can't believe in my ability." He was very happy to hear her say this, but he teased her pretending to be skeptical. Su-Yun opened her arms and put her arms around his neck. "How could it be? I just think this person is not worthy of your trouble. I'm so jealous." Sci-Yao just wanted to speak, but she took the initiative to block the next words with her red lips. It's so fragrant and soft." Even though he knew she did it on purpose, he couldn't resist this move. "Forget it, just be jealous if you're jealous," he admitted it. "Who made him succumb to this annoying little goblin? Are you ready for what I asked you to find?" Standing at the door of the room, blocking most of the sunlight behind him, the room instantly became much darker. Luo Yuanhang, who was leaning against the door, was playing with his newly bought mobile phone. His fingers were tapping on the screen quickly. Through the light and angle, Yoon Chug-seo could vaguely see that he was playing a game, and his expression darkened a bit. I thought you had gotten up, but I didn't expect you to move your body and jump into the quagmire. She pinched her bag and said word by word, if you don't plan to get up, then get out of here as soon as possible. What are you talking about? Following his voice, a small bag of things slammed in her direction. Yoon Chug-seo had quick eyesight and raised her hand to grab it. The response is very fast. He pressed his finger heavily on the screen, then raised his eyelids to look at her, stood up, and looked at her with an uncertain gaze. You are really not simple. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 287. Chapter 287. She is willing to take the gamble. Yoon Chug-seo ignored him and lowered her eyes to look at the things in her hands. Don't say I didn't remind you, this thing is not good for you women. What do you want it for? Luo Yuanhang stood up and walked towards her direction. You just have to do things, don't worry about other things. After weighing it for a while, there weren't many things, but the weight should be enough. Standing in front of her, Luo Yuanhang curled his lips. What, you treat me as a tool? You should be glad that you still have the opportunity to be a tool man. Putting away the things carefully, Yoon Chug-seo looked at him with a cold look. What's one more thing? Actually, you don't need to tell me, you already know it very well, Luo Yuanhang smiled sarcastically. In recent days, Luo Yuanhang has been quite aware of this. On the surface, she delegated the power in the secret channel to him, but how could she really let him go completely? Not to mention that there were people who would report directly to her. Even those people only followed her orders. She was just a face. Just a puppet on my son. To put it bluntly, if something happens and he is the one who shields her from the knife, this thoughtful woman turns out to be his half-sister. You don't have to be weird with me here. If you don't want to cooperate, I said you can leave at any time, she said disapprovingly. Did I say I was leaving? I also want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Luo Yuanhang picked up his phone unhurriedly and sent a picture to her. This is the person you are looking for. He should be arriving in Haikan in the near future, probably next week. I am still checking the specific itinerary and will send it to you. Glancing at the pictures on her phone, Yoon Chug-seo responded softly, don't contact me unless necessary. I will find you if anything happens. Seeing that she was about to leave, and staring at her back, Luo Yuanhang suddenly said, Ms. Yao doesn't even know what you've done, right? Her steps paused, and without looking back, her voice came over in a clear and cold voice, this is none of your business. After saying that, she walked away step by step. Interesting. Although I haven't been in contact with this sister for a long time, there are really many things about her that are very much like my mother. But I didn't expect that she is better than her. I'm afraid there are still many secrets hidden in her body. When the company collapsed before, he felt that his life was a complete failure and there would be no chance to turn around. However, now he feels that he really gave up too early. He still has a chance, right? Things are really getting more and more interesting. Are you sure it's really possible? Looking at the small bottle filled with transparent liquid, Su Jinran swallowed unconsciously. Yoon Chug-seo shook her head, I haven't tried it, but it should be no problem. After all, it's not easy to get. Don't use too much, just a little bit will do. Su Jinran said nothing, but clenched the small bottle tightly with her fingers, as if she was holding something important. 11 Ran, do you really want to do this? Didn't you say that he is not someone who can be coerced by others? Yoon Chug-seo asked tentatively, and said in a low voice. He will not be coerced by others, but he is also a person with a strong bottom line. Raising his eyes, Su Jinran's gaze fell faintly into the distance. I have been with him for so many years, and he has always been very self-controlled. He has never shown any. I know it's not just because of me. he will never allow himself to make any deviation, but if he touches me, he will definitely take responsibility. It is precisely because of my understanding of him that I particularly believe in this, and I also want to take advantage of this. Of course, she also knew very well that whether this matter succeeded or not, a new relationship would develop between her and him. As for whether it would get worse or turn in a better direction, it was hard to say. However, she's willing to take the gamble. He may be responsible for you, but what do you think he will do if he knows what you did to him? Reminding her again, Yoon Chug-seo said, aren't you afraid that he will hate you? Afraid? She took a deep breath and trembled when she thought about this possibility, but at the same time she said more firmly, even if I'm afraid, I will do it. Chug-seo, it's not scary that he hates me. What I'm most afraid of is that in his eyes, I don't matter at all, and he can't see me at all. Then one day, he will forget about me. When I think about this, I feel that even if he hates me, that would be a good thing. Looking at her, Yoon Chug-seo's eyes flashed with an unknown light. She sighed and said, okay. Since you have already thought about it, I can only support you. I hope your dream can come true. Thank you for always supporting me, encouraging me, and giving me guidance, Soo Jin-ran said sincerely, putting his hands on both sides of her shoulders. Chu Shui, you are really the best good friends. She suddenly seemed to remember something. By the way, there are also paparazzi, don't forget, at 10 o'clock exactly, let the news out half an hour in advance, I want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Don't worry, I remember it. Yoon Chug-seo nodded affirmatively and said, as a friend, I have done everything I can to help you. For the rest, you can only rely on yourself. She thought for a while and then said, but are you sure that Sci-fi will attend the Chamber of Commerce alone that day? He won't bring that woman with him. Soo Jin-ran shook his head, he has never brought her out in public, and, not only will that woman not appear at the Chamber of Commerce that day, let alone Sioux City. You kidnapped her, Yoon Chug-seo said with a surprised look on her face. Glancing at her, Soo Jin-ran smiled bitterly and said, I would like to do that, but there are many ways to get rid of someone, and it is not necessary to use kidnapping. And you? Anyway, just help me leak the news on time that day. I don't want to involve you. After interrupting her, Soo Jin-ran seemed to have made up his mind. These days, she has been suffering from inner torment. This time she is willing to risk everything, and she will take a gamble for herself no matter what. Yoon Chug-seo didn't say anything more, and just said in a low voice, it is said that the medicine is very effective. Don't use too much, otherwise it will be counterproductive. Don't worry, I measured. The voice was firm, but the fingertips holding the bottle were trembling slightly. She wanted to get his heart before, but now she just wants to get his person first. When there was a real-life scandal between a popular movie queen and a big shot in the fashion industry, she would feel excited just thinking about the excitement that day. And when that woman came back from the imperial capital, she didn't know how she would react when she saw such news. Does she really think she can hold Sci-fi firmly in her palm? Why should she? End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 288. Chapter 288. There are some things you can work hard on. Looking at the little woman who was busy packing her suitcase, Sci-fi couldn't help but hug her waist from behind. Otherwise, I'd better go with you. Although she is not going abroad this time, since the incident in France, he has been frightened and instinctively rejected her when he knew she was going on a business trip. Why don't I leave? Turning around, she said truthfully. Really? Sci-fi's eyes suddenly sparkled, and his voice rose several degrees. Idiot, she kissed him gently on the cheek. She smiled and bent down, continuing to pack her suitcase. I'm only going for 2 days and will be back soon. Besides, I'm not going abroad, I'm still in the imperial capital. Politics. The cultural center is right under your nose. Are you still afraid of something happening? Afraid, he buried his head in her neck, not hiding his worry for her. What she said is right, but he will still miss her and never want to be separated for a moment. Soo-yun's figure stiffened slightly. She didn't expect that he would express his care and concern for her so directly. She stopped and turned around, hugging him. Fool, I can protect myself. He knew that she could protect herself. In fact, he had been vaguely aware of it since returning from France. Although she didn't say anything, those kidnappers were not ordinary gangsters. In such an environment, she was able to hold on and was barely injured. It's hard to believe that it was luck. Of course, she didn't say it, so she wouldn't ask in such detail. It's just that she is from the Chu family, and it's not uncommon for her to have some self-defense skills. She has practiced martial arts since she was a child, but what can her self-defense skills achieve? He didn't quite understand the level. I know you learned some skills at the Chu family, but you have to know that fists and kicks are not the only things that can hurt people in this world. There are also things that are invisible than fists and kicks, but can hurt people 1,000 times more than fists and kicks. He sorted it out. Control your emotions, look at her, and speak seriously. This is also the reason why he is most worried. Things like France will naturally not happen in the imperial capital, but it is not an exaggeration to say that there is a dragon's pond and a tiger's den. This time, the Fragrance Industry Association specially invited her to go there, and he has a feeling in his heart. I'm afraid this trip is the hangman banquet, and the visitor is not good-natured. His eyes were full of concern. Soo-yun smiled, raised her hand to touch the corners of his eyes, and then gently smoothed his frowning eyebrows with her fingers. Of course I know. I don't dare to say how smart I am. But I'm not stupid enough not to be wary of others. Besides, I'm only going there for 2 days, and you arranged the accommodation for me. I also went to the association to do business these 2 days, so I shouldn't be in the public eye. What's the matter? Even if someone wants to make things difficult, believe me, they can handle it. Perhaps she was not sociable before and hated these unnecessary social interactions even more, but since being with him, she has gradually learned to deal with these on her own. When people learn to grow up and become independent, they must learn to accept and solve problems instead of avoiding them. Promise me a little. He raised his index finger and stopped trying to dissuade her. He just made a request. What? No, promise, try, be strong, he said every word with utmost seriousness. Soo-yun was startled, then she curved her lips and held his upright index finger in her palm. Okay, I promise you. There is no way she is trying to be brave. She just handles things she feels she can handle. Furthermore, she is just going to the imperial capital to attend a meeting. She really thinks she wants to break into the dragon's den and the tiger's den. Holding his finger and smiling, she also remembered something. By the way, I also have a request for reciprocity, and you have to agree to it. Yao nodded directly. You didn't even ask me what I was. Her eyes widened in surprise. Seeing his lack of hesitation, she couldn't help but complain. No matter what it is, I promise you. He was responsive to her requests. What she said made her embarrassed to ask for it, but since he has said so, there is no need for him to be polite. Then what if I say, I want the whole Asia? She raised her eyebrows and said half-jokingly. Her eyes seemed to be provoking, but she didn't know that her eyes turned over and turned into endless amorous feelings. Okay, he didn't even frown. He just put his arms around her waist and hugged her tighter. As long as you are not tired and willing to take care of it, you can go through the process tomorrow. With her body close to him, Soo-yun saw that he was speaking so seriously, so she cooperated and continued, whoever wants to take care of it will be so tired. If I take over, the first thing I do is sell it. It must be a lot of money. After saying that, he looked sideways at him, waiting for his reaction, but he was still so calm, and even nodded in approval. Okay. It is indeed a very large sum of money, at least for our whole life and our children's whole life. You don't have to worry. I can travel around the world with you, that's fine. Suyun. But there was a sudden turn, and Suyun asked hurriedly, but what? But I advise you not to do this. Do you regret it? She suppressed a smile and pretended to be dissatisfied. I knew you were reluctant to let go. It was just lip service. It's not that I couldn't bear to part with it, but I thought it wasn't worth it, probably because he was next to the bed behind him, and his posture was uncomfortable after standing for a long time, so he sat down on the edge of the bed, but did not let go of the hand holding her, and hugged her. He got up and let her sit on his lap facing him. He raised his head slightly and looked at her and said, the sale of Huanya is indeed a huge sum of money. It is enough to live on for you, me, and our children, but our grandchildren and future generations may not have enough money and they will not be able to live. It's very comfortable. For the sake of future generations, I suggest you stay in Huanya. If you feel tired, I will take care of it, and the money will continue to flow. This is a long-term solution, what do you think? His rational analysis and discussion made Suyun restrain her joking intentions and looked at him in surprise. Have you even considered your grandson? As long as it's about you, it's all within my scope of consideration. He gently kissed her chin and said warmly. I have heard his confession countless times, but every time I hear it, my heart still moves. I won't you any more. Her cheeks were hot, and she twisted her waist to get off his lap and continue to pack her luggage. Okay, let's stop talking nonsense and do something practical. Turning over, he pinned her down. Pushing against the soft bed behind her, Suyun opened her eyes wide, realistically. Speaking of grandsons, there are some things we should work first, such as making a son first. The corners of his lips rose. He thought this proposal was very good, and he immediately put it into action. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 289. Chapter 289. If this is your choice. The annual Sioux City Chamber of Commerce dinner is still very lively. Leaders from various industries will give face to it. On the one hand, it is an opportunity to network with business partners who have worked with this year. On the other hand, it is also to explore potential customers, and perhaps better investments. At this dinner, Yao was naturally the center of attention. Many small and medium-sized companies that wanted to cooperate with Huanya, or hoped to win his favor and invest, would try their best to please him. Su Genran was a little nervous holding the wine glass. She had been staring at him for a long time, but she couldn't find a chance to squeeze in and drag him out of the crowd. It's getting late. After having circled around, Yoon Chugseok came over, looked ahead with a smile, and said lightly. The voice was not loud, only two people could hear it, and of course only the two of them could understand it. I know. She pursed her lips, there are too many people, I'm waiting for the opportunity. Waiting is not an option. If we delay it any longer, I'm afraid he will leave. Lowering her head and taking a sip of wine, Yoon Chugseok still had a faint smile on her face and greeted everyone around without missing a beat. Su Genran was actually conflicted and struggling in her heart. She made up her mind to do this today, but she still couldn't help but feel a little scared. She has always been in love with and afraid of Yao. She has been in love with him for so many years, but she can't help but feel timid when facing him. He raised his head and took a big gulp of wine to embolden himself. Remember what we said. After saying these words, she strode towards Yao's direction. When he was almost there, He took 2 glasses of wine from the waiter's tray, stared at the man in front of him with burning eyes, touched the edge of the glass inadvertently with his little finger, then pushed through the crowd and came to him. Fourth brother. Sci-Yao looked back and saw her. Fourth brother, I was ignorant before. I did something that made you angry, and I was very impulsive. I hope you can forgive me. She handed him a glass of wine and said sincerely, I hope you, the adults, will not remember the mistakes of the villain. Looking at her, Sci-Yao politely took the wine glass, but did not drink it. You have grown up and should act appropriately. Forgiveness is not enough. I will still treat you as my sister. Hearing the word sister, Su Jianran's eyes flashed. I know, then, if you forgive me, we will have this drink. As she spoke, she raised the cup in her hand. Yuran, you and I have some friendship, so there's no need to drink to make amends, he said calmly, as if he had no intention of drinking. No, I want it. She moved a step further and continued to stand in front of him. For fear that he wouldn't drink, she raised her head and drank the contents of her cup. I'm sincere. I hope you can give me one chance. Her eyes were fixed on the wine glass, as if she couldn't feel at ease unless he drank. Is this really going to happen? Sci-Yao raised his eyebrows and asked again. Biting her lower lip, her eyes flickered, once, just this once. If this is your choice. After a moment of pondering, he said slowly, okay. He raised his head and drank the wine in the glass. He raised the empty glass and said, is that okay? Yes, yes, the voice was a little trembling. She may not have realized it, but her pounding heart did not feel relieved because he drank the glass of wine, but instead beat faster. He drank, he really drank. Everything was going according to her plan. Soon, the most important step would come soon. She only hoped that there was nothing wrong with this time, and that it would be what she wanted. Result. The time was at 9 o'clock, the dinner was in full swing, and the banquet hall was bustling with people drinking and drinking. Of course, some tired people went to their rooms to take a rest first. Su Jianran had been keeping an eye on Sci-Yao's movements. He had already left the venue for the rest room 15 minutes ago. She had already obtained the room card, 1808, in advance. She calculated that the effect of the medicine should be about the same, so she gave Yun Chugzio a wink and quietly left for the elevator. Looking at her disappearing back, Yun Chugzio curled her lips, walked outside the balcony and made a phone call. You can go and do it. Hang up the phone. Luo Yuanhang quickly followed the previous arrangement and released the news to the paparazzi. Room 1808 of Yongxiao Hotel had breaking news. Although the wording is vague, paparazzi are very sensitive to these smells and will act upon the wind. Whether it's true or not, a trip is always necessary. In fact, Luo Yuanhang didn't know what the breaking news was. He just followed Yun Chugzio's instructions. During the days of working with Yun Chugzio, he came to understand more and more why he had failed before. He is still too simple. He thought he was a yellow bird, but unexpectedly he was just a praying mantis. He thought Su Yun was the cicada he was holding firmly, but he didn't expect that she was actually a goshawk. She was just sleeping soundly before, but when she woke up, she soared into the sky. These days, he has been thinking very clearly about Wei Lan. He always has to look further and further. Once he takes over the entire Yun family, he will have enough strength to compete with Sci-Yao. If he can cannibalize others, why should he take one step at a time? Start small and work hard? My previous self was so stupid. Looking up at the room number 1808, and then at the room card in his hand, Su Jianran took a deep breath, put the room card close to the door lock, and with a tiny beep, the door opened. There was no light in the room, and she didn't dare to turn it on. It would be difficult if he woke up when the light came on. Through the dim light in the room, I could vaguely see someone sitting beside the bed. I could tell it was a man. Needless to say who it was. Suppressing her excitement, she walked towards the person slowly, but it was a bit strange. When the medicine was taking effect, could he still remain so calm and sit still like a mountain? The doubts in her heart also flashed away. After all, she was about to achieve her goal, and the excitement overshadowed other emotions. 4. I originally wanted to call him fourth brother, but I was afraid that the title would be revealed, so I simply walked up to him without saying a word, bent down, and tentatively reached out to touch his face. Her fingers touched her cheek, and she felt palpitations. She slid down her cheek, and her fingertips dug into the collar of his neck. She wanted to continue going down, but at this moment, her hand was suddenly held down. According to the intensity of the medicine, shouldn't he be the one to fight back and continue impatiently? But not only was he so calm, he had no intention of pounce. While I was wondering, the bedside table lamp flicked on, and the room was filled with light. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 290. Chapter 290. Su Jinran, are you stupid? The light was so dazzling that Su's Hiran couldn't open his eyes for a moment. He squinted and then opened them again. His face turned pale with shock. How could it be you? She staggered back in panic, but her hand was still pressed there, so she didn't fall, but it was embarrassing enough. One hand was still pressed firmly on her collarbone, which seemed to be the most advantageous evidence, but what she touched was not the person she thought about day and night, but her brother. Su Changjiang's face was no better than hers. He sat there with a dark face and looked at her deeply. Su's Hiran's brain was completely empty. He was completely confused and had no idea what was happening. If it's not me, then who should I be? He said quietly. His voice was sinister, and he was no longer as cheerful as usual. You, please let me go. Su Jinran was so angry that she was caught in a crime, and it was her brother who caught her. She could only desperately want to pull out her hand, as if this could erase her. Evidence of what he just wanted to do. He lowered his head and glanced at the hand he was holding down. If he hadn't stopped it in time, the position of his hand would be even lower now. He didn't know what this little girl would do. Su Changyang was not a little shocked in his heart. He never thought that his sister would dare to do such a thing. When Yao mentioned it to him, he didn't take it seriously, or even didn't believe it. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have definitely thought it was a rumor to slander her. As soon as he let go, Su Jinran fell unsteadily and fell backwards, falling hard. Sitting on the ground, she didn't want to get up for the time being. She was depressed. The key was that she hadn't figured out what was going on. Why are you here? Where is he? Since it has been revealed, there is nothing to hide, so I simply ask directly. How dare you ask? How dare you do such a thing? If I weren't here, tell me what you want to do. Are you crazy? Su Jinran. Su Changyang suddenly stood up, with a look on his face, scolded angrily. Faced with his scolding, Su Jinran looked very disapproving. He bent one leg and put one hand loosely on his knee. He tilted his head and looked at him. What did I do? I just want to be with the person I like. What's wrong with that? Su Changyang, what qualifications do you have to tell me? You have slept with so many women? At least I am more dedicated than you, you playboy. No matter how much I spend, I will never mess around with the Su family's career and future. Su Changyang was going crazy. At this time, she still didn't realize her mistake. I thought you had figured it out these days, but I didn't expect you are so brave. You dare to drug him. Do you know who he is, and do you know his methods? Do you want your whole family to die with you? Tisk. She sneered disdainfully and stood up slowly. Look at your timid appearance. If you hadn't been in the way, I would have slept with him. With his personality, Do you think he would? Aren't you responsible for me? When the time comes, our business will only grow, and you will also benefit from it. If I win the bid, it will be even better. You are still here making noises. Putting one hand on her belly, it seemed as if she was already pregnant. She thought for a while, by the way, where did you take him? And, how did you know? The plan was perfect. She didn't tell anyone except Yoon Chugseok. Even buying medicine and letting Chugseok do the talking, she didn't touch it herself and would never think of it. Is it the first snow? Thinking wildly, Su Changyang was so angry that he clenched his hands into fists and hung them by his side, trying his best to control his emotions. Su Jinran, you are really stupid. In his eyes, your methods are just childish. If it weren't for the past friendship between the two families, you don't know why you are dead now. Come with me now. He stretched out his hand to pick up Su Jinran, but something suddenly sounded and her face changed. Oops. What time is it now? It's 9:30. Su Changyang looked at the time and wondered, what's wrong? Fortunately, there's still time. She breathed a sigh of relief when she heard it was 9:30, then let's go quickly. Since the plan has completely failed, she can no longer stay here. It will be more troublesome when the paparazzi come. After adjusting her clothes, she glanced at Su Changyang, whose face was already ugly. She pouted, walked over and opened the door. Who would have expected it? As soon as the door opened, blinding flashes began to take pictures, accompanied by exclamations, Su Jinran, it's Su Jinran. Wow! When a popular movie queen opens a room with her, who is the man who opens the room with her? This news is so exciting. It is no wonder that they rushed here in a hurry, holding their cameras high as hard as they could, for fear that they would not be able to take detailed pictures. Su Jinran was walking in front, and Su Changyang was still in the room, so people outside did not see who the man was inside. Raising her arms to cover her eyes, Su Jinran was surprised how these people came so early. Obviously the news would not be released so early, but her many years of experience in facing the media made her calm enough. She smiled and said, everyone, this is what to do. If you want to interview, you should make an appointment with my agent first. Is Miss Su a person? There seems to be someone else inside. Miss Su is so late. Are you talking about the script? Is Miss Su in love? She had prepared some sharp questions herself, but now, she seemed very embarrassed. Why is it so noisy? Su Changyang walked out with a frown, looking impatient at being disturbed. Paparazzi. Young Master Su, those who have been involved in these gossip circles for many years still recognize these rich young men, especially playboys like Su Changyang, who are constantly involved in various scandals. Ken. Are they brothers and sisters? This is breaking news. Hello, he raised his hand and showed his signature smile. It's really hard for everyone to come to take photos of my sister so late. However, I hope you can give her some private space so that she doesn't get too tired. Why is Mr. Su here? Some people felt unwilling to give up and even looked into the room. Obviously, it was not like this. Seeing their actions, Su Jinran was very depressed. She also hoped that there were still people in the room. It was clear that this was not the arrangement, but everything went astray. Moreover, she was unable to pull her back, so she could only run in a strange direction. Can't I be here? My sister had a few too many drinks at the Chamber of Commerce and was resting in the room. Now I'm taking her home. Do you have any questions? Shrugging, Su Changyang answered naturally. Well. Everyone looked at each other, and there was indeed no problem, but what about tomorrow's headlines? Can't they say that the Su family brothers and sisters have a deep love and go home together? Isn't this crazy? While I was hesitating, I suddenly heard a thumping sound. The noise was quite loud. Because it happened to be in the opposite room, Everyone present could hear it clearly. For a moment, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. See. End of this chapter.